What's up guys, it's munclesonkey and welcome to my updated farming guide. Hopefully in this video I will give you guys a better perception of how to level from 1 to 99 farming, and I will be going over some of the new releases to farming such as the Elf City patches and a particular couple other things that you can plant that might be helpful. So first of all, when you are starting off farming, this is what you want to do. You want to do the quest A Fairy Tale Part 1. Requires Lost City and Nature Spirit. It will get you from 1 to 17 farming. One thing that you might find useful is the boss that you fight during this quest. You do damage based on your farming level, so you might want to plant a few potato seeds in allotment patches, which we will get to soon, just so you can get a couple farming levels so you can hit them a little bit more, so that boss is a little bit easier during the quest. Now that you've gotten your first initial few farming levels, you will be planting a mixture of trees, allotments, and herbs to level up your farming. The first thing we're going to go over is allotments, as these give very good XP at low levels of farming, and the seeds are relatively cheap and easy to obtain. If you are an Iron Man account, or if you don't want to use the GE to buy your seeds, there are a couple places in the game which you can buy them. The first place is the Draenor Village Seed Market. It only sells potato, onion, and cabbage seeds, however, but there is a place that you can buy some slightly higher level allotment seeds, and this is Farmer Jones, who is located in Birthwarp, which I'll show you guys as well. If you want to plant higher level seeds such as watermelons and snapegrass, you're either going to have to get those as drops yourself or buy them off the GE though. But these are really good XP, and I'd recommend planting them at lower farming levels just to get your level up really quickly, so you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on trees as well. So all 4 of the allotment patches are located next to herb patches. I will be going over herb patches later in this guide, so you will be able to see the full run where I go to all the allotment patches and all items that can help you access them a little bit quicker later on in the guide. One thing that is worth noting about allotment patches is it does take 3 seeds to plant in a patch instead of just 1, as it is with most other patches, which kind of makes sense because, as you can see here, the allotment patch is a fairly large farming patch, and so just because of that you might have to spend a little bit extra money on seeds than you initially thought. One other thing that you definitely want to take advantage of is you can plant flowers in the central patch out of these 4 patches that you can see, and depending on what type of flower it is, it will protect certain allotments. So for example, the marigold protects onions, tomatoes, and cabbages, and you just want to find the one that's right for you. Out of all these, you can just find them in the farming guide in game and make sure you plant that so your allotments have a much lower chance of dying. Now, where the real XP in farming comes in is through planting trees, both regular hardwood trees and fruit trees. I will go over all of the patches and show you guys where all of these are, and unfortunately trees can be fairly expensive. Definitely the higher level ones are going to cost you a pretty penny, and so some people might be limited by their funds on how many trees they can really afford to plant. However, I would recommend planting these even if you can't afford the most expensive ones, just because they're very good XP overall. So you just want to make sure that you plant all those tree seeds into saplings in the plant pots and then just water them, and they will slowly grow. For your lower level farming, you're going to want to plant oak trees during your run. For your medium level farming, you're going to want to plant willows. I wouldn't recommend going with fruit trees until 42 when you can plant curries, because before that, fruit trees take a long time to grow. They take a full day and they don't give a ton of XP, and you'll level up really quickly anyway if you are planting these lower level trees. How long it takes to grow depends on what type of tree it is, but I know with the willow tree it's a little bit under 5 hours to grow, so you can check them several times a day and get some pretty good farming XP. I personally went to 86 farming on willows and curries, and this is about as fast as it's going to get when it comes to trees, at least for cheap, because as you get into higher level trees they really increase in cost by a lot. Now from 60 plus farming you can advance into some higher level trees, and this is yews and papayas. Just remember, if you do decide to plant yew trees, make sure you are not using the payment for it, because it's very expensive and they don't die very often if you just use super compost on the tree patch. Only about 1 out of every 8 times, which might sound like a lot, but it's still a lot cheaper than paying the farmer to protect them. So yews and papayas are a pretty good way of farming. That's how I personally got to 99. It does get faster than this, and depending on GE prices, magic trees are sometimes even cheaper. However, this is usually a really steadfast way to go and a pretty good amount of farming XP a day for kind of a mid to high level cost. And finally, your most expensive way of farming is you're going to swap out those yews and papayas for magic and palm trees, and you can also add an elder tree in there if you want. It does take a long time to grow. It takes almost 3 days for the elder tree to grow, but that's just an option you can take if you want. So this is by far the most expensive way to farming, usually depending on GE prices. They've been a little bit weird lately, but this is going to get you 99 farming the fastest way if you do choose to go down this route and buy tree seeds. So if that's worth it to you, go for it. So when it comes to farming trees, this is the route that I personally like to take for my tree run. As you can see from my inventory, I use super compost for everything. I do plant magic trees and I don't plant fruit trees, but even if I were to, I'd probably use super compost for them as well. You do have them die about at a 1 in 8 chance with the magics and the palm trees, or even the yews and papayas, but I wouldn't really recommend using super compost for the papayas because their payment is really cheap. It ends up being slightly cheaper GP per XP overall, but that really just depends on how much you're willing to put into farming and really how quick that you want to get the level. So again, if you don't want to use super compost, or if you want to use the lunar spell fertile soil, that can save you a lot of inventory space there, and you can instead use that inventory space on teletabs to Varrock or Falador or any of the locations that I will be showing here, and that can speed up the farm run by a few seconds. If you really don't want to use the lodestones, that's completely fine, but other than that, just make sure your inventory is the same as mine. You might want to bring a giant ant pouch like I do, because that just allows you to harvest a little bit more from your fruit trees, so you're getting a little bit of that money back if you do choose to plant either papayas or palm trees, because the papayas and the coconuts are worth a fair amount. Also, if you don't have a witch doctor mask to teleport to the Juju farming place, you can instead replace that with the Juju teleport spirit bag, which you can just buy off the GE. They're typically pretty cheap, so I wouldn't worry too much about that one. Also, make sure if you have completed Moorings End Part 1 that you have an elf teleport crystal in your inventory. I kind of neglected to put one in there, but I'll grab it later on, and this will allow you quick access to the city of Letya, where there is a fruit tree farming patch, because it teleports you right there. You can just go ahead and bank here in the gnome stronghold and clear your inventory out, because you want to make sure that you have a lot of space. So again, if you're using the lunar spell fertile soil, this can be really handy, or if you are paying for your trees, you won't have to use as much space, because you don't want your inventory nice and empty, because that giant ant is going to be giving you a lot of fruit. Just remember, you can note everything on the Tulu Upcron, so it's not really that big of a deal. Also, make sure you have a Calcot sapling. These are really important. It's one of the cheapest GP per XPs in the game for farming, at least in terms of trees, because the Calcot tree gives a lot of XP. Unfortunately, they do take 18 hours to grow, so you can only plant one a day, but it is really cheap for how much farming XP it gives, and it's totally worth doing. Just make sure you got 72 farming in order to plant that one. So I guess the only last thing I have to touch on during this farming run as we wrap up here is one thing you can do for money if you don't care too much about your overall farming XP, and one thing that I was doing when I was actively doing farm runs every single day is you can just pick the coconuts or pick the papayas from your fruit trees and not replant them. And in that case, if you do that, you can just continue doing that, and I think it takes 3.5 hours for them to grow back, and that can be a pretty decent source of money making. It's not amazing money per run, but considering it only takes about 3 or 4 minutes to go around to all of the fruit tree patches, it actually is pretty good money per hour if you do it over a long period of time and just let the coconuts or papayas stock up. So again, just make sure to remember that elf crystal to go directly to the city of Letya. Mornings End Part 1 required, of course, for that one, and that's your last fruit tree patch. So there are 2 other tree patches that I talked a little bit about earlier, at least in terms of the elder tree. So if you have 90 farming, you can plant an elder tree. It requires Plague's End to get to this place, just like all the elf patches, obviously. And you can plant that, and it takes about 2.5-3 days to grow. Decent amount of farming XP when it is grown, but it does take a long time. The tree seeds are expensive, but it's whatever. And then you can also plant crystal trees, and the cool thing with these is you get 50k XP the first time you harvest them. You can get more seeds from crystal implings, and then every single time from then on you can check it once per day, and it's a nice 15k free farming XP. There's also a seed store, which is in the Elf City, where you can buy seedlings for trees, and this is really handy if you are on an Iron Man account and you have difficulty finding seeds or something like that. You can go ahead and buy those there, but I would not recommend this for regular accounts. So now we finally get into herb runs, which are possibly the most famous method of farming on RS. These aren't necessarily great XP until level 92 when you can plant the Fellstock herbs, and when you do those, they're about 12k, sometimes even up to 15k farming XP per run, depending on how lucky you get, obviously. But below that, what you can do is you can plant herbs for money. I will be leaving a link to the RuneScape wiki farming calculator in the description. You can just check that out, and that will tell you the best herbs that you want to farm at your level for the most profit at any given time, because the GE prices do change. However, at the moment it's Lantadine, so I'll be using those as an example because at the time of this video they are the most profitable. Just be aware that that can change, so make sure to check out that table to make sure you're planting the correct herbs to make the most money. Some helpful items for herb running are the magic secutars, which you hopefully should already have from when you started out farming and completed Fairy Tale Part 1 for those initial levels. 10% bonus herbs when equipped on that one. Also the Juju farming potion, which you need to make in the herblore habitat. I'm not going to be directly going over that in this video, but they are extremely handy and I'd highly recommend them because 33% extra herbs, that is really, really nice. Also, you want to pick yourself up a green fingers, or if you want to get serious about herb running, because this has a chance of double herbs. Depends on the tier, it goes up to 15% if you have the highest upgraded green fingers aura, and you can use it every herb run, so it's really nice, adds up over time. Herb runs are a really nice way to train farming, and one of my personal favorites because you can do them every 75 minutes and it can really add up to be a very nice profit, especially if you have all that stuff I mentioned earlier that will grant you bonus herbs. Also, 3 more items that aren't necessary for farm runs but can save you a little bit of time are the Ectopile, the Lumbridge Ring, and the Artie Cape, because these allow you faster access to some of the patches, so just make sure to take advantage of those ones if you have them. Of course, this is also the route to get to the 4 allotment pouches. However, there are 2 more herb patches that are locked off by quests that do not have allotment pouches next to them. The first out of these 2 patches is the Trollheim patch, which we'll go to in just a second, which requires My Arm's Big Adventure quest to access this one. Really worth it, especially because your herbs cannot die in this patch. They are forever protected, so you don't even have to super compost them if you don't want to. I'd recommend to do it anyway, just so they grow a little bit faster. Also, again, if you've completed Plague's End, there's so many patches in the Elf City, it's really worth unlocking just for farming alone. There is another patch that you can use there, so take advantage of that one if you have Elf City unlocked. The last type of crop that I'm going to go over, and I really want you guys to consider planting if you have the farming level for, is barberry bushes. You can do barberry bushes very quickly. They're about 8k farming XP per run, and also depending on your agility level, up to about 8 or even more k agility XP per run, which is really nice considering it only takes a couple minutes to do, and you can do them several times a day. They take about 3.5-4 hours to grow. The barberry bush seeds are practically free. You can buy them in the Grand Exchange for only about 1 GP each, which is one of my favorite things about them, just how incredibly cheap they are. And this is the run that I use for barberries. Of course, you will need the Elf City unlocked to be able to get to one of the bush patches, and also a spirit tree planted in the Elf City to teleport to Miscellanea to do this the optimal way, but you can just access Miscellanea with either a fairy ring or a ring of wealth teleport as well if you don't have access to that Elf City or don't have a spirit tree planted there. Other than that, the other 4 bush patches are really easy to get access to. I would recommend having an Arty Cape 3 at least to teleport to the last one, but you're just teleporting to the monastery, so you do have unlimited teleports per day even with the Arty Cape 3 to that particular bush patch, so that's pretty nice. Anyway, make sure you're doing these ones if you have 77 farming, and lots of farming and agility XP is in store. The last thing about farming that is worth mentioning, but unfortunately will not be practical for most of you, is going to be doing grapevines. These require 95 farming, which is the main reason why they're not very practical for people that are going for 99, because you can't plant them until the very end of your journey. However, if you do decide to plant these, be ready to be rewarded with some pretty decent XP and money. It's comparable to doing another herb run essentially, and you can do these at the same time as herb runs, as they only take 80 minutes to grow, so you can do them several times per day, and it's about 10 to 12k farming XP, and depends on GE prices of course, but you can make around 200k profit per run after you turn all of these grapes into wines and then sell them in the GE of course. So this is just the route I take. If you are interested in doing them yourself, just make sure to take this exact same route. There are 4 grapevine patches total. The Intrana one is a little bit annoying to get to, but it is definitely worth it if you want to get into grapevine runs. As you can see, I kind of get into them myself with the amount of grapevine seeds I have, and hopefully I'll make a decent amount of money from these in the long run. And finally, I am obligated to tell you guys that wilderness warbands are a pretty good way to train farming. Admittedly, there are 5 different skills you can train in wilderness warbands. Farming is one of them. So if you are into warbands, or you're looking to get into warbands to train some skills that you don't want to train the normal way, farming is one of these that you can do. Unfortunately, I don't do warbands myself. I don't have access to any warbands FCs, so I cannot really recommend one for you guys. But if you are in a clan or have some friends that know of some, feel free to join in if you want to train farming in an inexpensive way, and if you want to miss out on all the fun of actually farming. Anyway, that's about all for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave what you would like to see as the next 1 to 99 guide in the comments, and I will base that off of what you guys tell me to do. So that's about all for this video. Hopefully it helped out. If you need any other 1 to 99 guides, the playlist link will be in the description and on the video itself, and farewell.
We'll be right back.